ring, no baloney, no baloney. Hey. Let me beat it.
Accused of murdering her ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, so her attorney says it was self-defense. Our WLWT News Size anchor Ashley Kirkland has much more on what happened during her first court appearance today. Hi, Ash.
Hi, guys. Well, prosecutors say 25-year-old Marshie Luther shot and killed her ex-girlfriend, 29-year-old Taralynn Bowers. And today in court, prosecutors argued for a high bond, saying the two women were in a verbal dispute that escalated to Bowers being shot and killed. They say the victim didn't have a firearm, only mace. There's no word on what led up to the argument. Luther pleaded not guilty to murder. Luther's attorney asked the judge to consider a bond of $100,000 at 10%. Her attorney says there's a lot more to this story and that Luther was defending herself.
Taralynn Bowers was a devoted mother for whose life appeared to be finding balance after years of struggle. But behind her attempts to rebuild stability, a dangerous connection was forming, one her family had warned her about. Their concerns weren't vague. They were direct and repeated. Yet, Taralynn continued down a path that would soon collide with someone known on the streets as Staddy. The relationship wasn't traditional. It came with tension, jealousy, and sudden shifts that even close relatives noticed. Online posts hinted at disagreements. Texts revealed power dynamics and control. But to the outside world, it looked like a complicated romance. Until the night everything changed. When Taralynn failed to return home, questions began to rise. Where had she gone? Who was the last to see her alive? And why were warnings ignored just days before the tragedy? The investigation would uncover disturbing details about a relationship fueled by possessiveness and confrontation. Digital footprints, witness statements, and forensic evidence began to outline a grim sequence of events that no one expected to reach such a violent conclusion. How did a mother trying to rebuild her life end up in the center of a deadly confrontation? What did the people around her know? And when did they realize it was too late? If you are drawn to true crime stories that reveal hidden truths, we invite you to subscribe. Your support enables us to share real cases, raise awareness, and give a voice to those who can no longer speak for themselves. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you are watching from and share your thoughts as the story unfolds. Welcome to Spotlight Crime, a place where we examine cases that shake communities and reveal what often remains hidden behind closed doors. Real stories, real people, real impact. Subscribe today and turn on notifications so you won't miss what comes next. Taralynn Bowers was a 37-year-old woman residing in a suburban neighborhood in North Carolina. She was a mother of 4 children, all under the age of 16, and was known in her area for working multiple jobs to maintain stability after years of personal and financial challenges. Taralynn's household relied heavily on her income and consistency, and her relatives were active in her daily life, assisting with childcare and transportation whenever possible. In earlier years, Taralynn had experienced unstable relationships marked by control and distrust. Friends describe her as someone who often gave second chances, even in situations that appear harmful. After separating from a long-term partner, she focused on rebuilding her life. She secured a part-time job at a retail store and supplemented her income through small online sales. Taralynn's social media reflected a woman trying to regain confidence. Her posts often revolved around family activities, motivation, and independence. However, family members privately expressed concerns about the type of people she engaged with online. They noticed that she frequently accepted friend requests and interacted with individuals connected to street activity or controversial reputations. Relatives later stated that Taralynn had been warned several times about her new acquaintances. Despite the warnings, she insisted she could handle herself and dismissed concerns as overprotective. Her family's unease grew stronger when she began communicating with someone known locally as Staddy. Staddy, whose real name was identified as Tatiana Staddy Johnson, was a woman in her late 20s with an active presence on social media. Her online identity projected confidence and toughness, often referencing loyalty, dominance, and distrust of others. Investigators later describe her as a figure connected to a small social circle known for confrontational behavior, both online and offline. Taralynn reportedly met Staddy through mutual contacts on Facebook. Their early conversations began casually. Comments under posts, shared memes, and direct messages that turned into late-night exchanges. Over time, the two began communicating daily. Friends described their connection as unconventional and intense, progressing quickly from friendly interactions to a relationship dynamic. Family members noticed changes almost immediately. Taralynn started mentioning Staddy frequently and posting subtle references that suggested a close bond. Some relatives questioned the authenticity of the relationship and warned her to distance herself. They believed Staddy displayed signs of controlling behavior early on, such as constantly monitoring Taralynn's online activity and questioning her interactions with others. Screenshots later recovered by investigators revealed messages from Staddy that showed jealousy and hostility toward people in Taralynn's circle. Despite these signs, Taralynn continued engaging with her. Those close to her recalled that she often defended the relationship, saying that Staddy understood her better than anyone else. Within months, the relationship between Taralynn and Staddy began to deteriorate. Investigators pieced together a timeline through digital communication records and social media posts. The pattern showed consistent arguments, emotional instability, and episodes of public confrontation. On several occasions, friends noticed cryptic posts from both women, hinting at betrayal and mistrust. One post from Staddy included indirect threats about loyalty, while Taralynn's responses suggested she was tired of conflict but hesitant to leave. Relatives later described her as becoming withdrawn during this period, attending fewer family gatherings and spending more time alone or on her phone. Neighbors reported hearing loud arguments outside Taralynn's home at least twice. On one occasion, a witness stated that a dark-colored vehicle associated with Staddy was parked near the residence during the argument. Police were never called, and the situation de-escalated before it drew official attention. As the months went on, Taralynn began missing work shifts and appeared distracted, according to her co-workers. Family members again tried to intervene, suggesting she end the relationship before it escalated further. Despite their advice, she continued communicating with Staddy, possibly out of fear or attachment. The final days of Taralynn's life were marked by visible tension. Text messages recovered later showed repeated arguments between her and Staddy over alleged betrayal and online interactions. Taralynn confided in a close relative that she wanted to end things for good, but was afraid of the reaction. In the 48 hours leading up to the incident, Taralynn posted less frequently on social media, though she was seen active through messenger apps. A relative reported that she looked anxious during their last in-person meeting. Surveillance footage obtained later from nearby stores showed Taralynn's vehicle and another car, believed belonged to Staddy, following a similar route. Investigators found that Staddy had attempted to contact Taralynn multiple times on the night before the crime. The tone of the messages became increasingly aggressive, accusing Taralynn of deception and disrespect. Several witnesses later stated they heard raised voices outside Taralynn's home that evening. On the morning of the incident, Taralynn's phone activity stopped abruptly. Family members tried calling throughout the day, receiving no response. By evening, concern grew when she failed to pick up her children as scheduled. A key question arose later. Could the family's earlier warnings and knowledge of growing tension have led to an earlier intervention? Law enforcement noted that while several people recognized the danger, no formal report was ever filed prior to the fatal confrontation. The incident occurred late at night in a residential area near Taralynn's home. According to the police report, neighbors reported hearing a loud argument followed by a single gunshot. Responding officers arrived within minutes. Taralynn Bowers was found unresponsive near her vehicle. Emergency medical personnel confirmed she had sustained a fatal gunshot wound. The weapon was not recovered at the scene, but several shell casings and personal items were collected as evidence. The area was immediately secured, and homicide detectives were called to take over. Witnesses described seeing a dark-colored sedan leaving the scene shortly after the gunshot. Surveillance cameras from nearby buildings captured partial footage of a car matching the description associated with Staddy's vehicle. Officers began canvassing the area, interviewing neighbors and collecting security footage. Inside Taralynn's vehicle, investigators found her phone, which was later used to extract digital messages exchanged with Staddy leading up to the event. The contents indicated an escalating argument that culminated just minutes before the shooting. Within hours, authorities named Tayana Staddy Johnson as a person of interest. Her known social media accounts were monitored, and several posts appeared deleted shortly after the crime. Initial findings included footprints consistent with the suspect's shoe pattern, a discarded phone case, and tire impressions linking to the suspected vehicle. The investigation officially transitioned into a targeted homicide inquiry. The discovery of Taralynn Bowers' body prompted a rapid and coordinated response from local law enforcement. Officers secured the scene, marking off the perimeter to preserve potential evidence. Detectives from the Homicide Division arrived within the hour. They immediately began collecting physical items, shell casings, fibers, and personal belongings scattered near the area where the incident occurred. Authorities identified Staddy as a person of interest within the first 24 hours. His name surfaced repeatedly during witness interviews and from statements given by Taralynn's relatives. Family members informed investigators that Taralynn had been in an unstable relationship with a man known by that street name. They provided his photograph, phone number, and records of threatening messages previously sent to the victim. Digital forensics began early. The last incoming message was from a number linked to Staddy. Social media accounts also contained direct interactions between both individuals shortly before her death. Crime scene technicians recovered fingerprints from the victim's vehicle door and partial DNA evidence from a discarded cigarette near the location. Ballistics experts analyzed casings found on site, confirming they matched the type of firearm previously seen in Staddy's social media posts. As the case gained attention, community members began sharing information online. Several tips came from residents who claimed to have seen a vehicle matching Staddy's car leaving the area shortly before police arrived. Local news stations reported on the incident, increasing pressure for authorities to locate the suspect. Family members gave multiple interviews confirming that they had warned Taralynn about this relationship. They provided messages showing attempts to convince her to cut off contact. Their testimonies established a pattern of concern that investigators documented as potential evidence of premeditation and risk awareness. The homicide unit reconstructed the events leading up to the killing, using phone data, surveillance footage, and eyewitness accounts. Investigators established a detailed timeline covering the 48 hours before Taralynn's death. Phone logs showed frequent communication between Taralynn and Staddy in the days prior, including several missed calls on the night of the incident. Text messages indicated rising tension, with arguments over loyalty and perceived betrayal. The tone of the final exchange suggested a confrontation was planned. GPS tracking from Taralynn's phone placed her vehicle at a location consistent with where her body was later found. Detectives also obtained nearby surveillance footage showing her car arriving, followed minutes later by another vehicle registered to an associate of Staddy. Detectives interviewed multiple witnesses. One neighbor reported hearing a loud argument, followed by what sounded like gunshots. Another identified a man fleeing the scene wearing dark clothing. Associates of Staddy provided conflicting accounts of his whereabouts that evening. One claimed he was at a friend's house, while another admitted he left suddenly around the same time as the shooting. As forensic reports came back, evidence strengthened the connection. DNA from the cigarette matched Staddy. Cell tower data placed his phone in the same vicinity as the victim's during the critical time frame. The ballistic analysis confirmed the weapon type matched a firearm connected to his online profile. Investigators confronted Staddy's known associates, piecing together a motive based on jealousy and control. Witnesses stated that he had accused Taralynn of seeing someone else and that he had made verbal threats days before the incident. Once these findings aligned, detectives formally identified him as the prime suspect. A warrant for his arrest was issued, marking a turning point in the investigation. Staddy was located 3 days later in a neighboring city after a coordinated surveillance effort. Law enforcement traced his location through mobile signal triangulation and tips from acquaintances who confirmed he was hiding with a relative. The arrest occurred without resistance. He was transported to the county detention facility for questioning. During interrogation, detectives presented him with forensic findings and digital communication records. At first, he denied knowing the victim beyond casual contact. When confronted with messages retrieved from both phones, his story shifted. He then admitted to meeting her that night, but claimed he left before the incident. Investigators noted several inconsistencies. His phone was inactive during the exact window when the killing occurred, indicating deliberate disconnection. Additionally, the vehicle sighted on surveillance matched his registration, and traces of gunshot residue were found on his jacket. Throughout questioning, Staddy requested legal representation. After consultation with an attorney, he refused further statements. The interview concluded with detectives formally charging him with second-degree murder. Pending further forensic confirmation, the case advanced to court within months. The prosecution presented a comprehensive package of evidence, including digital communications, forensic analysis, and eyewitness testimony. They argued that Staddy had lured Taralynn to a secluded location under the pretense of resolving personal disputes, then fatally attacked her following an argument. The defense attempted to introduce doubt, suggesting that another individual could have been involved. They cited the lack of direct eyewitness identification at the moment of the shooting. However, prosecutors countered with circumstantial and scientific evidence, DNA, phone tracking, and ballistic matches, each independently linking the defendant to the scene. Key witnesses included family members, digital forensics experts, and acquaintances who testified about prior threats. Surveillance footage reinforced the timeline, showing his vehicle in the area minutes before the sound of gunfire. The defense's claim of mistaken identity weakened when jurors reviewed time-stamped GPS data aligning his movements with the crime window. After deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict. The judge imposed a lengthy sentence consistent with state law for homicide with aggravating circumstances. The court concluded that the killing resulted from escalating personal conflict and deliberate confrontation. The sentencing drew public attention across local and regional news platforms. Reporters revisited early warnings from Taralynn's family, highlighting repeated attempts to alert her to potential danger. In statements after the verdict, family members expressed the need for stronger intervention systems in domestic or high-risk relationships. Community organizations began using the case as an educational example of ignored warnings and early red flags in violent relationships. Despite closure in court, questions remained unresolved. Could earlier reporting of threats have changed the outcome? Were there missed opportunities for law enforcement to intervene before the fatal night? Analysts pointed to a recurring pattern seen in similar cases. Repeated warnings dismissed until violence occurred. The story became a reference point in discussions about domestic threat assessment, communication breakdowns, and the limits of protective measures. What would you have done if your loved one ignored repeated warnings about a dangerous partner? Do early warning signs in relationships often go unreported until it's too late? Could intervention or stronger protective measures have prevented this outcome? Why do so many similar cases follow the same pattern of ignored danger despite visible red flags? If this story has kept your attention, do not forget to like this video and share it with others. For more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind tragic events, subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell to stay updated with our latest investigations, reports, and discussions. Thank you for joining us in this pursuit of truth and justice. Together, we can shed light where darkness remains. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant.